So today I just have a few little things to, like, bits and pieces of business to do. Like, I had like two or three different things I wanted to talk about. I just decided I would throw them into one video. And so the first thing is just the announcement that I do have a new anthology dropping on Tuesday, June 1st. It's got some short stories and it's got some of my plays, which have never been published. One of them has been produced multiple times, and another got turned into a screenplay that did pretty well in like screenwriting competitions, and very nearly got made several times, but then never did get made, unfortunately. And we'll talk about that actually in just a few minutes when I get to the main topic of this video. So anyway, the name of that is Lost Pieces and Things with No Place, and you can pre-order it on Amazon. It's just an ebook, or buy it when it comes out. I always appreciate the support. And the plays I've actually made available for students and community theaters to do for free. I don't request any royalties from that. I just ask that they send me either a copy of the program or some photos from the production, because I like to collect those things. Though that's fun for me. So anyway, that is my little announcement. And then so quick book review for actually it's here behind me, I think. I ran out of like bookshelf space, so I'm like shoving books in random places now. I did read The Psychology of Notorious Serial Killers, which is apparently the first in a series. If you watch Dr. Todd Grande's channel at all, he does kind of psychological profiles of various celebrities and notorious killers, and just it's an interesting channel. I recommend you go check him out. Not that, I mean, he's got like a lot of subscribers and stuff already, but if you just happen to not have heard of him, I just find it very very interesting, so I wanted to read this book. It's pretty thin, and it's really just, it covers some of the best known serial killers. It gives kind of an encapsulated view of each of their like criminal histories, nothing in depth. Obviously, you could probably find multiple books on any one of these people, like the Night Stalker or the Ridgeway Killer. But encapsulates their criminal history, and then discusses where they fall on the 5-factor model of personality, and like what we can learn from similarities across. Anyway, it's interesting. It's really short, pretty quick read. There were some formatting and grammatical things that bothered me, but that I think is because I used to work in publishing and was an editor, and like I pick up on those things. Like, I think maybe those things bother me more than they might the average person. I don't know, but anyway. So overall, if you're interested in that kind of thing, it's a decent read. Definitely his channel is really good. I recommend that once again. But anyway, the chief thing I was going to talk about today was people ask why I self-publish, and it's kind of a long story. We're gonna go back first to the whole screenwriting thing. So, and actually we're gonna go back to when I worked on film sets, and because originally I wanted to be a screenwriter, and I wrote specs, and I got good feedback on them, and but the industry is really not very open. You always hear it's hard to break in, and it is, like, especially for women and people who don't already have connections. And even though I was working for a pretty well-known producer at the time, it was a struggle, and the environment was not healthy. And I did, like I said, I wrote some screenplays and some specs that did really well, including 20 August, which is the play that I turned into a screenplay that did well. And I won an award for the screen version of The Fall and Rise of Peter Stoller, which I only did St. Peter in Chains as the film version. And again, like, very nearly got made. Like, I had a lot of near hits, but it's very frustrating. And, you know, it got to the point where people were like, well, you should just make your movies yourself. That's how it's done now. You prove yourself by making your own movie. But the bar to entry in making your own movie is extremely high. You need the money. You need the equipment. You need to be able to find people who will do it and can do it. And, you know, you need locations, and you need, you know, and even though what I was writing, 20 August is very, like, indie film, you know, it's doable, but it's still not something I could do or had the ability to do. And I had some indie directors who were interested, and I was working actually with an agent who was a wonderful man, but he was older and he didn't quite understand the whole indie, like, scene. So he was he scared away the indie directors who were interested in making 20 August. And, you know, it all kind of fell through, sadly. So, the thing about, so eventually I went, instead of staying in film, I went and got my master's in writing, literature, and publishing, and began working in publishing, and then decided to start writing my own stuff. Well, I had been writing for a long time, let's be real, but, like, really writing my own stuff and getting it published. And if you go to my website, you can see my writing resume. My first published stuff was, like, back in 2000, not counting fan fiction, like fanzine stuff that got published back in the 90s. That's actually my first published stuff, was fan stuff. But and the barrier to entry to produce your own books is obviously much lower. You can self-publish books, really, like, it's not hard. And so when things like my Sherlock Holmes stories weren't getting picked up by mystery magazines or whatever, I had other stories picked up by magazines and journals, and I'd had poems published, and, you know, I just decided I'd do it myself, and I did. This was, like, back in 2012, and that kind of wild days of Amazon, and, you know, things like that. And the same thing with the first part of the Peter Stoller trilogy. If you haven't read The Fall and Rise of Peter Stoller, it's in 3 parts, and originally those 3 parts were going to be separately published. So St. Peter in Chains was separately published. St. Peter at the Gate also, sorry, off the camera, also was separately published, and then I took it all down and shopped it. Again, had interest from agents, and but when they found out that the first part, even though I had rewritten significantly, had been published previously, they lost interest. And that's not atypical for the industry. I didn't really know that at the time. I did find a publisher for it. It got published by a small publisher. It didn't do as well as I would have liked. There are a lot of reasons, and I won't go into it, but eventually I got the rights back and published it myself, and it did better. Again, I had done the screenplay version, which had won an award, and I was working with somebody who was interested in turning it into a film, and he was, you know, looking for production companies and stuff, but it just didn't go anywhere, sadly. I still hope someday that one will be made into maybe like one of those like TV miniseries. You know, you could probably do it in like 3 or 4 parts. It wouldn't be a big deal. But so yeah, so I had, hang on, cat. Okay, so the cat is in here now, which we all know can mean a certain amount of chaos. Okay, I'm watching him. Anyway, so I had another agent for a little while. She meant well, but she didn't really have the connections. And then I also had, again, a third agent who only shopped one of my manuscripts to one place. And when they said no, she was like, I don't have time for this, and dropped me. So, and I'm not going to name names or do anything like that. But like it, you know, basically, but then there were agents who were encouraging, but the downside was, hang on. So now the cat has been thrown out again. All right. So anyway, so I've had 3 different agents. And then I had some almost agents who were all very encouraging. They were like, really like this, but I can't sell it. Can you write me something else? And that's kind of, or they would ask for like a revise and resubmit, but they weren't clear on what needed to be fixed or changed. And I have Asperger's. I need direction. I need clear information, because I know that I write differently. I'm neuroatypical. Like, my story structures sometimes are a little bit different than the typical. Anyway, that aside, without clear instructions, I found it harder to revise without knowing what it was that wasn't working, or you know, they were just, well, this is kind of, and it was like, well, tell me what you want me to do and I'll do it. But I know that agents don't like to do that. They don't want to dictate the story. They want the author to figure it out, and that's fine. But anyway, bottom line was, I did have a couple books published by small publishers. That experience didn't really go the way I wanted it to. So I went back to self-publishing because I can control the books. I can decide, you know, when to run a promotion, or what the discount's going to be and stuff like that. And I can write the books to my satisfaction, which may not always be to everyone's satisfaction. I can also just write the stories I want to write, which is not something that agented authors can always do. So I guess that's the bottom line, was just that, that's why I went back to self-publishing, because I felt like when agents wanted me to write something different or change what I had written, I got confused. Like, that actually was confusing to me. Like, I was like, then what do you want? And like, when you start worrying about what other people want all the time, you quit being happy. That's what I've learned. I've learned that when I'm worried about what other people think of me, and this may just be a personal thing. I mean, for some people, that's not a problem. Like, they're like, yeah, I can write to the market. I can, you know, whatever you want, I'll do it. And I'm willing to try. I just wasn't getting the guidelines or the guidance that I needed. Because this is good, but I can't sell it. It doesn't tell me a whole lot. I'm like, well, okay. Yeah, so like, when I'm worried about what other people think, I end up kind of freezing up, and not being able to do any writing. And so when I'm just writing what I want to write, the way I want to write it, and then hopefully I find people who also enjoy it, that's more my thing. And so that's, and that just makes me happier. I mean, it just, mental health wise, it's much better for me. That said, I wouldn't say no to an agent where I could like actually work with them on a level that made sense to me. Like if they were to say, okay, this is really good, but here's all my notes for things that need to be tightened or changed or, whatever, I'd totally try. I'm not going to say no. Having worked in publishing, I know, what it's like on the other side of the desk and everything. But yeah, so that's my self-publishing story. That's my publishing history of sorts. I do still get short stories picked up by various like online journals and stuff periodically, which is always exciting, very validating. I think a lot of people seek a publisher or an agent in a big publisher, not just because they want the marketing and promotion, which I would say small publishers aren't always equipped to give you, in my experience. But also because it just feels validating, right? Like, it's like, oh, I was good enough. But the truth is, you can be a really good writer. You can be like good enough and still not good enough for the market, because a market is different from good work. Like, it's not about how good your work is. It's about whether or not an agent and a publisher thinks they can sell it. And those two things are not the same. And I know that because I've worked in publishing, and I know like there'd be plenty of really good work that, our marketing team would be like, yeah, but we don't know how to sell it. So, no. So, and that's just the nature of the business. Because it is a business. And yeah, it's kind of like a popularity contest, really. And so when you kind of decide, and I have the luxury of not having to worry about how many copies I sell or how much money I make. But I mean, obviously I would love to sell lots of books and make lots of money. And get lots of awards and be asked to sit on lots of panels or whatever. But I find that when you start being more worried about those things, your joy in the writing goes away, or at least is way lessened. And again, it gets harder, for me, it gets harder to write when I'm worried about, am I doing this well enough? Am I doing this right? I always used to tell people who were starting out, they would read all these how-to books and they'd be like, but what if I do it wrong? And I'm like, that's why I tell people, do the writing first and read the how-to later, because you can fix it. You can, as we say in film, fix it in post. You can fix it later, but if you're so worried about doing it wrong before you even get started, you'll never write anything. You'll get paralysis. Like, it just doesn't work. So anyway, that's more or less like a very short version of my publishing history and why I self-publish now and have quit querying and all those kinds of things, because it became clearer and clearer to me that what I write is not what they're looking for. And I'm grateful that they at least told me that I was a good writer. Like, I think I'd be more like upset and worried if they had been like, just no all the time. But they were like, no, this is really good, but. And so that's, I guess, encouraging. Nobody wants to hear the but, unfortunately, part. But it just, I think once you accept it, it gets easier. It gets easier to do what you want to do when you accept that maybe you're just outside the mainstream. And that's okay. I guess if I really wanted to be a mainstream writer, I don't know. I don't think I could. I don't know. That's a whole other story. Anyway, that is all I had for today. Again, new book coming and I did the book review, and I talked a little bit about self-publishing and my own publishing, journey. And I still kind of hope one day one of my like screenplays will get made. But I know that's a long shot. And and that's kind of why I went back to prose, just because I feel like there are more opportunities in publishing than in filmmaking. Yeah. So if you have any questions about publishing, leave them in the comments, or hit me up on Twitter. And yeah. See you next time.